That is one of the most rude things that any of us can do to someone else. It's not a meeting request, it's a summons. My name is Chris Fenning, and I help people communicate more clearly at work. Let's say you could be 7% more efficient in your communication at work. How much of a difference would that make to your day, to your week? As few words as possible. That is the golden rule. You can get your message across in 2 lines, do it in 2 lines. If you are writing an email that ends up with a scroll bar, absolutely too long. There are 3 things every meeting needs when you're planning it, prepping it, inviting people and introducing it. And those 3 things are...
Our books are now open.
If you need help getting in front of your dream client, we might just be able to help.
If you're a business who's wondering how to grow in 2026 and beyond, but there's not enough meetings in the diary with either the right person or the person who genuinely wants to solve the problem, we might be able to help.
WeHaveAmeeting.com.
Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I've been thinking about this through the morning and really looking forward to getting into the conversation.
I've been looking forward to it too. So thank you for joining us. Big question, Chris. We're going to kick off. Who are you and what problem do you solve?
You started with a tough question there. So my name is Chris Fenning, as I think will probably in the show notes, and I help people communicate more clearly at work. More specifically, I help people communicate between teams, experts to non-experts, whether that's technical people to non-technical people, sales, talking to operations, but being able to be, let's say you could be 7% more efficient in your communication at work. How much of a difference would that make to your day, to your week? And I help people achieve that.
Nice. So if I'm doing the opposite of everything that you talk about and teach, what would my life in work probably look like, Chris? What are the symptoms?
Well, one of the symptoms that you might not notice that people around you would is when you're talking, everyone around you is sort of eyes glazed, tuning out, back on their emails, on their phones. So if you were long-winded and couldn't get to the point, your conversations would take 10 to 15 minutes instead of 3 to 5 minutes. If your meetings weren't well organized, if they weren't set up well from the start, you'd have twice as many of them and they'd be half as successful. And when it comes time to be promoted, you probably wouldn't, because the people who consistently get promoted are those who communicate the best.
So let's look at something really actionable then, right? Something that we can give people to take away in the first few minutes of this podcast. The framework for starting a meeting, is it something that's repeatable, you can do every single time and see results from, or does it differ from meeting to meeting? What would you say to that, Chris?
I would say that for the majority of internal meetings, so not external sales client stuff, but although there is some crossover, for the majority of internal meetings, there is absolutely a repeatable framework. There are 3 things every meeting needs when you're planning it, prepping it, inviting people and introducing it. And those 3 things are a clear topic, a clear purpose, and a defined desired output. What are you there to talk about? What are you there to do? That's the purpose. And what are you going to produce? Whether that's a revised risk log, whether it is a decision, whether it's a bunch of ideas, there should be something that you can write down or print out at the end of the meeting. So TPO, topic, purpose, and output. That is the framework you should use whenever you're thinking, I want to set up a meeting.
So I'm already thinking there about, I can't remember if it was Amazon or another huge company, but they basically have a framework that what do you want to happen in this meeting? Everyone basically either agrees or disagrees. But if they agree that's the outcome, the meeting then shortens right down, sometimes not even happening in the first place because they say, oh yeah, I agree. That's what we all need to be doing right now. Cool. There's your action points. See you later. Is there a way you could input this framework and actually that could be the outcome? You have much less meetings as a result.
Oh, yes. So when you're thinking about the topic, the purpose and the output, you're thinking about, well, who do I need to be able to achieve these things? In terms of the purpose, if it's make a decision, do you know the people you need? Do you know what the decision is that needs to be made? Can you write it down? And if you write it down and send it to people, Does it need a big discussion? Does it need 17 people sat in a room telling their Me Too version of, oh yeah, I think this is important because let me tell you about the story from 5 years ago, why I think it's great. All that goes away if you start thinking in this framework. And there's another framework you can use at the beginning. I love 3-part frameworks. We'll have as many of them as you want, depending on the topics. But there's a, why do I need this meeting? And that's what you should be thinking beforehand. Like, does this topic require input from other people? And you'd be astonished how often the answer is no. Like, I'm calling a meeting, but I don't need any input. I just want to deliver information. Well, in that case, send an email or make a phone call. The second thing is, does it need people to be live and together? Does it need a real-time conversation? And if it does, a meeting could be great. But if it doesn't, if everyone can provide their input separately, do you need a meeting or can you make it an asynchronous piece of work? So answer those couple of questions and you can rule out a whole bunch of meetings before they happen.
I love it, Chris. I love where we're going with it. I'm thinking about it though, and I think that good framework, sometimes when they end up in the wrong hands, can sometimes be dangerous. So I'm thinking about like the information that you were given there, if it was delivered in an abrasive way, could probably piss people off. And if you're thinking about leading people, not get them on side. So when you think about the topic and the desired outcome and things like that, how do you best kind of deliver that at the start of the meeting, or how much of the delivery is in an email ahead of time? How are you thinking about that?
Oh, yeah. So I've got 2 parts to answer in this. I definitely want to come back to the wrong model in the wrong hands, because Zach earlier mentioned the Amazon approach. So I want to come back to that. Don't let me forget. The rest of what you said is absolutely true. The delivery of it makes such a difference. And abrasiveness comes in tone and the words that we use. And that is like, speaking face to face, if I said, I need to talk to you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. That's very different from, hey, I need to talk to you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Even my tone has changed how you feel about that event. But when it comes to meetings, we often do something that's terrible, and TPO can help solve this. Have either of you received a blank meeting invite?
Oh,
With
yeah,
nothing
loads of times.
nothing in the body?
Loads of times.
Loads of times. Okay. That is one of the most rude things that any of us can do to someone else. It's not a meeting request, it's a summons. Be in meeting room 2 at 1:30 tomorrow morning. You wouldn't send a birthday invitation. You wouldn't send an invitation to a social gathering with just a date and a time. You put some other information in there. And you definitely wouldn't walk up to a colleague's desk and say, Jack, you're going to be in conference room 3 at 3 p.m. tomorrow, and then walk away. Like, how rude is that? But we do it when we get a blank meeting invite. The way to change it, and this will address that tone of voice question as well. The way we change it is in the meeting invite, just put 3 bullet points. What is the topic? What is the purpose? And what is the desired output? 3 bullet points, and the person receiving it will know what that meeting's about. They should be able to judge whether they can contribute to it in a meaningful way. And those 3 bullet points make the tone fairly neutral. It's hard to be abrasive if you've got those 3 items and you're just clearly saying, we're going to talk about this. Our goal is to achieve this thing. And by the end, we'll have produced something. It's hard to make that seem abrasive.
I love that. So let's go back to I'm here to remind you the right framework, the wrong hands, examples that you can think of where you've seen this end dangerously.
Yes, and the Amazon example. So there was a period of time, it's about 1.5 years ago, where the Jeff Bezos interview of him talking about the 6-page memo and how no meeting happens without a 6-page memo. And the first 15 minutes of the meeting is everybody reading that memo, making their notes. And then the rest of the meeting is the conversation to clarify stuff, make the decisions, etc. And this became quite a popular idea for good practice for meetings. You know, Amazon's a successful company. This is how the head of the company does their meetings. This is the framework. Let's jump on board and use it. And my response to that is, oh my goodness, don't do it. It's terrible. for most situations. It works for Bezos and the executives because they are making high-level strategic decisions, which requires a good structured layout, a good amount of information, some thinking time. You want everyone to be on the same page so they all read it, and then you have a discussion. In that situation, it's a great way to get busy executives on the same page. But for 5 people trying to do a transactional project meeting day to day, it's awful. Huge amount of work up front, requiring them to fill in a template that's really quite restrictive and is 6 pages long. Silent reading for 15 minutes where people may not need to do that. It's just the wrong method. For execs at a high level making strategic decisions, brilliant. For the rest of us mere mortals, it's terrible. Wrong model, wrong situation.
So let's talk about getting everyone on the same page. And you mentioned it then, and let's take it all the way to the top of the meeting. So the power of that first minute, everyone's sat in there, you're about to kick off the meeting. How do we really make the most of that first minute?
All right, well, there's 2 parts to it. One is the social element. So everything we talk about in terms of structure and intro and so on, that comes after we've been a human. So if you're in a room or if you're on online Zoom, it can be a great opportunity to build relationships, to be human beings, to interact with each other. Not everyone wants to, not everyone likes it, but it is a great thing to do. So don't forget about that. Once the official meeting start begins, you can introduce it using topic, purpose, and output. And that gets everybody on the page. I know it sounds very repetitive. There are other things as well, but it's such a core part of a successful meeting. And if you've written your invite that includes TPO, think of the situation where you're running from one meeting to another, back-to-back meetings throughout the day. You're leading the meeting. You've got a context shift in your mind to get from one place into the focus for that event. Well, your invite gives you what you're going to talk about, what you're going to be doing, and hopefully what you're achieving by the end. It helps you shift in. You read it out to the room. Everybody knows why they're there, what they're there to do, and what the goal to produce at the end is. It's a very simple way to get everybody's focus from everything else they're doing and bring it in to focus on the actual purpose of that meeting. And it does it without a 5 to 15 minute long-winded rambling introduction. And people will appreciate that as well.
I'm thinking now about, so people love the frameworks, right? And the time-sensitive framework of the first minute. The only issue here is if someone's implementing it for the first few times and perhaps had the time where it went a bit wrong and they lost a bit of control in that first minute, it wasn't delivered well, it's kind of derailed the meeting. Have you got any advice for those people who maybe it's gone a bit wrong in that first 1 to 5 minutes of how to kind of regain it?
Oh yeah, and there's all sorts of ways it can go wrong. Someone else jumps in with a different topic, or they try and push the meeting towards their purpose rather than what it was set up for. So there's a way you can avoid it and a way you can deal with it. So to deal with it is, as soon as you notice it's gone off, grab hold of the framework and bring everyone back in. So let's say we were in a session, there were a few other people here as well, and I said, we're here to achieve this thing and we're going to do that. And then the topic takes a massive left turn and we're now talking about something completely different. As soon as I recognize that, I can say, hey folks, hi, sorry, just for a moment, this is an important topic, but it's not what we originally set out to do today. Our original purpose was to do this thing, to talk about next month's sales targets and what our approaches are going to be. What we're talking about now isn't aligned with that. And then here is the critical thing. If you're not confident, you can ask it as a question rather than making a statement. Because a confident person can say, hey folks, we're not here to talk about that, we're here to talk about this. But if you're not confident, you can say, I just want to check, that topic is different from what we're here to do. Is that more important than what we originally set out to do in this session? Are we focusing on the wrong thing for the original plan for this meeting? Ask it as a question, and even the most obnoxious people will quite often sort of realize they've taken something in a different direction, go, okay, yeah, no, sorry, we should go back to go, well, maybe not the most obnoxious people, but most people will sort of have that moment of, oh, sorry, yeah, shouldn't have taken us off. Let's get back on point. Or they will say, oh, no, this other thing is actually more important, and here's why. And at that point, you can choose to repurpose the meeting or not. But if you start with that clear purpose statement, you can always watch to see, are we moving away from it or are we still on track with it?
We are entering a new era of outbound.
4 years in, We Have a Meeting has leveled up our entire offer. That's why multi-billion-pound brands trust us.
And we book meetings with Netflix, Spotify, Facebook, even Barcelona Football Club.
We've helped close deals up to 950,000.
We're doing it all. Phone, LinkedIn, email, direct mail, and there's a few weird and wonderful possibilities that we're keeping in our back pocket. So if you're struggling to get in front of the right people at the right time, inquire today.
The way you asked the question was beautiful, because I think if I was to ask that, I'd be far more passive aggressive with it. Of, oh, are we here to talk about this, Chris? Or so I read a study the other day, and I think it was a Scandinavian company, country. It could have been like Sweden or Norway, and they were teaching empathy in school, which I think empathy is a massive sales skill. But it feels like we're not really taught how to communicate at work in university or school. So all of our lives we go into reception, then we're pushed through the system and blah blah blah. You get ready to make choices, but none of us know how to communicate when we get into the big wide world. So what's your take on that?
No, I think you are 100% right. Absolutely right. And I actually looked into this. So I specifically looking at tech courses at the time. I looked at the top 10 universities in the UK that offer computing and science-based courses. And of the top 10 tech programs in the top 10 universities, so 100 different programs, there were 3 modules in these 3 and 4 year programs, 3 modules out of 607 that included the word communications, and 2 of them were actually about communications. One of them was about tech, and they were both optional. So we spend all this time in university teaching people a topic and then nothing about communicating. And the second problem in this education versus workplace is the way we communicate between the ages of 0 and 18, or call it 2023 if you're leaving university with a 4 or 5 year degree. The way we communicate in that whole time is almost nothing like how we communicate at work. And here's what I mean. As a kid, you communicate socially with your peers, not transactionally. It's about fitting in. It's about being funny or listening to someone who's saying something funny. It's about receiving instructions and so on. So you've got a big social and family dynamic. And then at school, we're taught to receive, to ask questions, speak when we're spoken to, and there's very little agency, very little self-direction on how we should communicate. It's all very, very structured. And then in one day, we leave school or university, we go to work, and employers expect us to be able to communicate by email, set up meetings, run meetings, talk to people about issues and problems and ask for things. And we've had no education on that at all. And it's totally different from social communication. Totally different.
So let's play a little bit of a game, Chris. Let's say I'm going to give you your own university, the University of Chris, and what if the main course there was communication at work, and you had to break that down, so communication, into different modules, what do you think is definitely necessary, and what are maybe some of the optional modules that you could throw in there? But like, what would you put on the agenda?
Oh, I love that question. What would I do if I could wave a magic wand and rule the world? So from a comms perspective, I'd actually like us to, my university would consider the approach to communication skills training differently from how it's talked about anywhere. I would not use the words communication skills. What we would teach is we would teach methods and techniques for communication situations. And there are fundamental techniques that are required across all situations, And that includes things like tone of voice and paying attention. But then when you get to specific situations, there are different models. And the way I would think about it is communication is a little bit like cooking, where you want a certain outcome. You want to make a lasagna or you want to make a particular cake. You get a recipe and it involves a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of something else, and you mix them together in a certain way. Communication situations require a recipe of techniques in different amounts. You have somebody selling. Well, that selling isn't one skill. Selling from a stage to a room full of people requires a different combination of techniques and methods, a different set of ingredients and a different recipe, versus selling one-to-one to the CEO of a company, versus selling through a formal bidding process. Each one of those is different. You can't hire a salesperson and expect them to win in every situation. You've got to hire for specific situations. So my communications university would teach communication situations. And there's foundational level skills. That is, can you summarize? Can you be clear and concise? Can you be organized? Can you adjust your message to fit with the audience? Which means thinking about their perspective, making things relevant, thinking about impact to them or things they care about. There would be that foundational layer. Year one would be everyone learns this. And then they could specialize based on situations. And you've got giving status updates, speaking from the stage, writing a report, asking questions in different situations. That's how I would structure it. And then the content would teach to those situations.
So there's probably a good example we can think of if we continue down this rabbit hole a little bit. Businesses will have probably within them a technical expert or a technical team, and then perhaps more broadly a jack of all trades kind of persona, someone who's maybe more commercial business minded. And perhaps those technical updates get lost on the broader business because of the jargon or the language that's used. So how could a technical team better communicate with the wider business?
Yeah. And I'd expand it from technical to any expertise. I work quite a lot with finance and marketing, finance and legal teams, marketing as well, but finance and legal teams, because they're so steeped in their expertise that they struggle to communicate clearly at the level of their audience. So how can they do it? The first thing is to consider the perspective of the person or people that you're talking to. As an expert, if I'm a process owner in an organization, I own this process, making this thing run smoothly end to end is what I'm responsible for, or a product, making sure that that's successful. If I talk about the product or the process to somebody outside my team, they probably don't care. What they care about is, what does this product or process mean or do for the business? What does it mean or do for the customer? What does it mean or do for the employee? So the first thing everyone should do, but let's keep it tech for now. A tech person should say, I'm talking to another person in my organization. What do they care about? What is their perspective? Do they care most about impacts to the business, impacts to the client, or impacts to the product itself? And if they don't know, they should ask, but it's usually pretty easy to work out based on role. Talking to someone higher up in the organization, they're going to care mostly about impacts to the business. And I've used a word a lot there, which is impact, which is the second thing. So step one, consider the perspective of your audience. Business, people as in clients or employees, or product and process. And then think about the impact of your message, of the thing you want to convey. And the reason this is important, or the reason this works, is most of our work conversations are transactional. I want to give you an idea that's going to have an impact to make things better for the customer, better for the business, better for me. Or I want to talk about a problem that's making things worse for the business, for the customer, for me, for the product. But I'm talking about the impact to something that the other person cares about, and it strips away the tech info, it strips away the jargon, and it makes something relevant because we care about impacts to us and the things that we care about. So perspective and impact, if we can think in those terms, our communication gets an order of magnitude clearer right away.
So then those people who are those topic experts, right? The feedback loop is probably really easy if you're working in a startup. It's really agile. I can kind of see people in the office, and maybe I can spot in the body language not really quite landing in the way that I thought it would.
Yeah, someone going,
But then it's business. Yeah, exactly. But then as businesses get more complex, it's probably hard to have that feedback layer of are all the different parts of the business communicating properly? Does sales understand product? Does marketing understand? Does legal understand? All the different parts, are they communicating cohesively? Yeah. So maybe what are some of those symptoms that people might be experiencing, and what are some things that you've seen that have helped kind of bridge those gaps?
The symptoms, how do you know there's a problem? Frustration between teams feeling like they're in individual clans or tribes. Sales saying, oh, that engineering team just never understands, or customer service just doesn't get it. If you find yourself being frustrated that someone doesn't get it, or they keep asking you for things that don't make sense, or there's any kind of frustration, communication is often a key part of that. So that if you've got that, that is a sign to stop and say, all right, should we look at how we're talking with each other? The second thing is it takes self-awareness. We have to be aware that we're not great at communicating. And I include myself in this, and I teach this stuff. There are some areas of communication that I'm terrible at, which is why I won't teach them. And we need to know that we're not great and be open to feedback and recognize this thing always never seems to work. Why isn't this working? I'll give you a specific example. I was working with a team it's a tech team, on their Jira tickets. So Jira is a system for putting in software requests, filing bugs, and so on. It's a workflow management tool where people can put info in, and then someone decides what gets worked on first. And the tech teams were putting in really detailed tickets. They were putting in really good descriptions, really good being relative, long descriptions, technical descriptions of the thing they wanted to fix, and descriptions of the problem. And then wondering, why is the business not prioritizing this? Why does my idea never get funded? Why does it never get prioritized? And the reason for this group was they never said why anyone else should care. It was assumed that this is important. Obviously, this is important. I've explained exactly what's happening. And they knew what the impact was from their perspective. But what they hadn't said was this very specific example, a feature that used to be working doesn't work anymore. Customers are annoyed. I know 3 customers who've left. Well, that's a really obvious business impact. So hang on, now I'm paying attention to it as a business decision maker. Like, oh, customers are leaving because of this. Let me pay attention. Rather than, oh, in this recent release, something regressed. We did this function's not working. Tech. That headline and that impact statement immediately made it relevant to the business. And some said, well, why haven't we worked on this sooner? The tech team said, well, no one's prioritized it. You've been ignoring it. And then they said, well, you didn't tell me why it was important. And it went back and forth. And they got to a point of saying, okay, yeah, now we understand why it's important. So that is a great way to sort of help bridge that divide. Find if you've got these frustrations and then focus on perspective and impact, and are you able to get your message across?
Oh, I'm so annoyed no one ever answers the phone, Jack.
Wow, what's been happening, man?
I'm ringing off data and just no one answers. It's straight through to people's mums and answering phones and retirees and butchers.
Man,
I've got sales calls to make.
you're not going to hit target this month, are you?
I'm definitely not going to. If only I could find a data provider that's 98% effective.
I'm glad you asked, Zach Thompson. I'm glad you asked. Have you ever heard of Prospeo?
Prospeo? You mean Prospeo?
Wow, I didn't know you could spell. Yeah, Prospeo. They are a data provider that's 98% better than every other data provider. You should check them out.
Wow, but I can't try it out for free using /wham at the end of it, can I? So it'd be prospeo.io/wham. That wouldn't get me anything for free, would it?
I don't think you spelt it right, but the link's in the bio for anyone that does want the right link. Prospeo. Get your data.
So we sat down with Julian Treasure. I don't know if you know him, and we spoke about there's that phrase that gets passed down that 70% is how you look and your body language. 25% is your tone, and 5% is the words you use. Julian said, actually, that's not true, and that's
Not
a bit
true.
a myth.
No,
Yeah,
it's the
that's
most,
not
one of the
true.
most misrepresented things.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased you said that.
Yeah, imagine if I went, and Chris, we love that. That's our Bible. We've got that on the wall. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'll tell you off there, guys.
Okay.
So obviously, but there's something about the words we say, and I would say probably billions, if not gazillions, of emails get sent every single day where you are just focusing purely on the written word. Me and Zach have a rule that if we ever get like a long email from a client, we just pick up the phone, because there is no way that we can go back and forth over there, because we know it's just going to end messy. So let's talk about, I mean, this is weird for an agency that specializes in cold calling, but let's talk about email for the next 10 minutes. Where are people going wrong with emails, Chris?
So let's start at the top. Subject lines that don't make sense, subject lines that aren't informative, don't tell me why I should open it. We've got, I don't need to provide any stats because everyone gets too many emails. I looked at my personal email. I had Columbia, the clothing brand, sent me 27 emails in the last 4 days. Like, too many emails. You just tune them out. So a clear subject line at work that is informative, and it tells me, what is this email about, and what should I do with it? Is there an action required? Am I answering a question? Putting that in the subject line increases the chance I will open it. And then once I've opened it, as few words as possible. That is the golden rule, as few words as possible. If you can get your message across in 2 lines, do it in 2 lines. If you are writing an email that ends up with a scroll bar, it is too long. Absolutely too long. And so that's the second thing. First is the subject line. Second thing is keep it short. And the third is introduce your message and structure it well. The introduction of the message, if you start with, hey, how's your weekend? I heard your sports team did this. I got a new picture of my dog. Are you interested? You will read that message and go, oh, this is a social email. I won't read it because I've got work to do. So it's one of those times where social niceties goes out of the window. And I know some people are going to hate that I said that. But they're those people. I have conversations with them where they say, I need to be personal in an email. Well, they ignore the emails they get that start with something personal because they're too busy and need to get on with their work. So their desire and their behavior don't tally. So your introduction should be really clear. Hey, I'm emailing you about this topic because I want you to do X, Y, and Z, or I need something or other. I have 3 questions for you. I've put them below. And then you write your questions. You say, thanks and goodbye. And you'd strip everything else out. And if people did just those 3 things, better subject lines, 1-2 sentence introduction, and then really short emails, they would get better replies. They'd have fewer emails in their inboxes. It would save them time.
Can you think of do any stories spring to mind of how you've implemented this for companies or people you've been working with, and maybe some of the results that have kind of came from that?
Yes, I teach. So I wrote a book called Effective Emails. It's an exciting read. I mean, you'll laugh, you'll cry, it'll change your life. But it won't do any of those things, but it will make your emails more effective at work. And I don't train on it very often because it's not an exciting topic. People don't like, they go, yeah, I'm going to an email workshop. But the best result I had when I shared the books, I did some in-person training with a company in the US, and I got a phone call because I said, I don't want to send you an email because I've had so few emails. The person called me and said, Chris, you was recently in the training, and I called you because I'm getting 30 to 40% fewer emails in my week. And it's because of how they had changed what they wrote in their first emails. And then they wanted to call me because they didn't want me to reply to their email and have another one in their inbox. So they'd adopted that pick up the phone, which also was a nicer human interaction. But they had said 30 to 40%. And I regularly get people saying 20% or more reduction in the number of emails they receive because they've been clearer in the emails they send.
Nice. So you touched on training then. So training that as an idea, and that's clear evidence of training an idea that's stuck.
Yeah.
But there will be lots of people that are trying to implement training weekly, daily, quarterly, whatever it is, whatever their training agenda is. And it feels like there's maybe that early adoption, hopefully, but then you can sort of feel the training start to kind of fade away. So how do you stop training fading and actually keep it as impactful as it is from day one?
Yes, making training stick. And we have lived in a sort of one and done training environment for decades, where a company, a trainer, an organization will come in, deliver training for half a day or a week, and it was, "You're all trained now. Excellent. Go forth and do great things." And people immediately go back to their jobs and immediately go back to bad habits. There's something called the Ebbinghaus curve, or the forgetting curve, that has been proven time and time again that within 72 hours of leaving a training event, 90% of what we've been taught has left our heads. So making training stick is about building in habits, changing behaviors. And there are lots of ways to do it, but one of the most effective ways is a little and often, that regular repetition. So whether we're talking about changing email behavior or generally in training in general, a training session, someone like me comes into your organization, delivers some training, I should also be coming with a whole suite of ways to make it stick. It could be, ironically, email reminders, if that's what the organization wants to have more emails. It could be top-up training. It could be short videos. It could be peer feedback. If I'd worked with the two of you, you'd leave the training session with defined actions to follow up with each other and keep yourself accountable. Like a gym buddy. We tend to go to the gym more if we've got a gym buddy because we feel that we've committed to doing something. So using a method like that, sort of training buddies, peers, can help make that training stick. And when it comes to emails or meetings, there's a really easy thing to do. If you have the ability to set up a template in your calendar, set up a template that just includes topic, purpose, and output as 3 labels in the meeting invite. So every time you click new meeting, those labels are there for you to fill in. Find easy ways to change your behavior without having to think about it too much.
Our book is out now. Sales is Therapy is available everywhere for people who are looking to get better at communicating,
Asking better questions, closing more deals, and bringing in more clients.
Beware, it is not for the faint of heart or for closed-minded people.
You can buy it in all good shops, links below.
So maybe you could give us some advice there then, Chris. So we had our work summer party on the weekend, and there's a few residual hangovers, I think, coming into this week. Me and Jack are giving some training tomorrow morning to the team in terms of making that kind of both energizing and informative and kind of setting people up for the day so they feel like, okay, I can run through a wall today. What advice would you give to me and Jack for delivering that training in the morning?
Oh, so now we're into like energizing the room and icebreakers and so on. I'm of the school of thought amongst trainers that icebreakers are terrible unless they directly contribute to what's happening in the day. That any icebreaker that's just share a fact, let's throw a ball of string around, and when you catch it, you got to say something that connects you to the other person. All that stuff stands in the way of giving people what they're there to achieve. So if you want to energize people, it comes back to perspective and relevance. How does the training impact them? What are they going to get from it? And don't spend 10 minutes. Spend 15 seconds saying, the training today will improve X, Y, or Z. This will save us time in the day, reduce the meetings that we have, stop the number of confusions and errors, increase our revenue. Like, just get really clear on the output for those individuals. And if there are 3 groups in the room, you say, okay, the training is going to deliver. If you work in sales, this is what you're going to get from today. If you work on the back-end systems, this is what you're going to get from today. Does that sound valuable? And if everyone's saying no, then you've probably misjudged what the training is. But if you've got that right, people will feel more connected Doesn't mean they're all going to pay attention, but they will likely feel more connected and more involved because relevance means impact to us. So start with that, and then as quickly as possible, get the people in the room doing something. There's a great book called The 2-Hour Workshop Guide by Leanne Hughes. I think a 2-Hour Workshop Guide, Leanne Hughes, and another one by Rob Fitzpatrick called The Workshop Survival Guide. And both of them have really, really good templates for how to get people actively engaged in the topic very early. Because the sooner people are in contribute mode rather than receive mode, the sooner they're actively involved in the training. So thinking about early activities, and we can go through examples if you want, but we're getting a bit into the weeds if we do that. But early engagement, clear relevance, clear impact, get them doing something that contributes to their learning.
Chris, this conversation has been amazing. I don't want you to live in Virginia. I want you to be in the UK so we can catch up every 2 weeks and talk shop.
So Chris, one of the big things that's probably changed in maybe the last 2 year that just seems to be everywhere is this idea of AI and the impact it's going to have on communicate. You can already see people kind of outsourcing things that they used to do manually, and a lot of that's that kind of human touch point. What are your kind of predictions and things that you're starting to see and maybe think about?
Yeah, so AI has changed hugely. If you'd asked me this 6-12 months ago, I was very much AI is helpful, but it's better to learn how to do it yourself. Like if you're writing an email, you still need to know what you want to achieve. You still got to put the information in. If you have to type all that into the AI tool, you might as well just write a short email yourself. But where I've landed now is different. We talked earlier about how difficult it is to form habits and change behaviors. It takes a long time to learn habits and change behaviors. Writing emails, setting up meetings, giving status updates, and so on. Where AI can help is it can take your initial input and it can really clean it up. But AI generically isn't built on all of the models. So for example, I have a number of custom GPTs that you can put a status update into, and it will come back and it'll ask you for missing information based on the audience you want to give it to. So it builds and it coaches. And this stuff is so good that the company that I'm working with, they now use it internally for their own email tidying up, for their own status updates. Because while they were building it, they're like, oh, this is actually helping me. And so they're now adopting the tool they were trying to sell for me. So AI is absolutely going to be core to so much of our communication, whether it's using how do I make this email better tool that's been custom created, like the stuff I offer, or it's AI chatbots that are becoming increasingly harder to tell the difference between a bored agent in a different country and an AI agent. In fact, in many cases, you get clearer answers in English on this on our site. And to give one really clear example, Ikea, the furniture company, had 3,000 staff in their call center. Those 3,000 staff were replaced by AI chatbots. Now, this is a good news story. This sounds like a terrible thing, but what Ikea did was said, well, we now have 3,000 people who know our business. What can we do with them instead? They now offer free design consulting calls that leads to people buying more products. And the AI system was as good as the people in serving basic customer service questions, that the company could reuse that resource, it's 3,000 people, to offer a new service that generated new revenue. So that's just one example of how AI is really going to make a difference.
You're probably the first person who's ended on the positive there. And I didn't know that about Ikea. That probably doesn't hit the headlines because it's a positive outcome. The what you mostly hear is this team was replaced, massive unemployment. You probably don't hear that a lot. And that's probably an example as well of kind of long-term thinking from Ikea there as well. Feels like AI has been used to kind of, let's make us really short-term profitable and just forget about the long-term. Yeah. So that comes out somewhere. Okay. Well, Chris, this has been an amazing chat. There's loads more that we wanted to talk to you about, but maybe we'll get you in for a part two. if someone's listening to this and they want to work with you, they obviously know about the problems you solve, you've probably got the cogs going, where would you send them next in an ideal scenario?
Yep, come and find me on my website, which is my name, chrisfenning.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. That's my main social hangout.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you for having me.